There's 5 pillars of autojuvenation. It's what you eat, when you eat, nutritional supplements, skincare, and non-invasive treatments. This is that term that I've used in the book many times called autojuvenation. And that's the fact that our bodies contain these immense regenerative abilities to rejuvenate itself naturally, but you have to unlock it by using the right tools and giving it the right environment. And we found that they looked upwards of 5 years younger after 2 months of this very simple skincare routine. So we nicknamed it the 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. Well, there are studies that have been performed on red light therapy where they have done split face studies, where they take the face and they split it in half. In one half, they do a sham laser, and on the other half, they do red light therapy. They have found that in as little as 1 month, you can see an improvement in the collagen and the elastin in the skin. So now really I've realized that the goal of being a plastic surgeon is not to bring my patients to the operating room, but to keep them out of the operating room. It's a very exciting time to get older because
for somebody who's ready to start the process of looking and feeling younger, how do you recommend they get going?
well, the first thing when you're looking at turning back the clock or really kind of slowing that process down is I always recommend you look at what you eat. When you look at kind of the whole breadth of kind of overall anti-aging or fighting the aging process, the way I look at it, it's like you're building a house. And some people come to my office, I'm a plastic surgeon, and they'll say, I want a facelift. That, here's money, let's do it. And the way I look at it is, okay, like a facelift, Botox, all those types of treatments, it's like you're building a house and that's like the spire at the top of the house. You don't want to start with that. You got to start with the foundation. And the foundation with overall turning back the clock, slowing down the aging process is food. That's the foundation of your house. And so that's what I usually recommend that people start with.
Okay. How do they begin that?
Well, the first thing you got to look at is what causes aging of the skin. And so when I look at aging of the skin, I focus on 5 main things. And all 5 of these do have some type of connection to the food that you eat. So the first thing is nutrient depletion. There is this belief, especially among alternative health practitioners and experts, that the food that we eat now is not as nutritious as it used to be. And there are studies that do support that. So nutrient depletion, one of the main agers of our skin. Second would be collagen degradation or collagen breakdown. Our skin is composed about 70 to 80% of collagen. And as we get older, we lose about 1% of the thickness of collagen every year. Women after menopause, in the first 5 years after menopause, studies show that they lose upwards of 30% of the thickness of collagen in just those 5 years, and then about 2% a year afterwards. So collagen degradation is a huge part of aging of the skin. Third thing is chronic inflammation. We know that acute inflammation can be a good thing. Chronic inflammation is a bad thing. And one big cause of that is excess sugar in the diet. Fourth cause of aging of the skin is free radicals and oxidation. At one point, people believed that was the main cause of our aging of our bodies, but we know now that it's just one component of that. And then the fifth cause is a buildup of cellular waste, is not allowing our bodies to undergo the process of autophagy at a regular basis. And so focusing on those 5 things, food has definitely plays a part in all 5 of those.
And when it comes to these 5 pillars, is there a certain diet template that you like to work with underneath those?
So, I'm not I have friends of mine who are keto, I have friends of mine who are vegan, I have friends of mine who are paleo. For me, what I look at isn't so much trying to pigeonhole yourself into a certain diet, because we know, and we both have good friends of ours who have been plant-based for a while, and they find that for a while they feel good, and then maybe they don't feel so good, and then they go paleo, and at times maybe going on a keto diet has helped them. So I don't think that there's one specific diet that is best for everybody. I do believe in bio-individuality and knowing yourself, how your body thrives, and finding out for yourself what foods cause your body to thrive. That being said, there are some universals, okay? And so what are those universals? Well, when you look at, once again, aging of the skin, and one of those causes of aging is collagen degradation, okay? Collagen is a protein. It's a large protein. And one thing you want to make sure is that you get sufficient amounts of protein in your diet so that you can help that collagen degradation process to slow down. And so getting healthy sources of protein, super, super important. Once again, another cause of aging of the skin I mentioned earlier was oxidation and free radicals. Free radicals are basically these molecules that are created by our body's natural metabolism. So the fact that you're just alive, your body will create these free radicals. Well, your body also will generate antioxidants. Antioxidants neutralize free radicals. And in somebody like yourself and somebody like some of your guests that you've had on the show, their body is at a pretty good homeostasis because they're living a healthy lifestyle where the amount of antioxidants that they're, let's say, ingesting or that their body's creating is enough to neutralize those free radicals. But in other people, when their lifestyle is not so good, they're smoking, they're exposed to a lot of pollution, cigarette smoke, automobile exhaust, and even ultra processed foods are filled with free radicals. Then now you're getting into a situation where you're in what we call oxidative stress, where the amount of free radicals is higher than the amount of antioxidants, and those excess free radicals can actually damage the DNA of your cells. So what do? And this is something that, once again, I think that is a good rule for basically everybody, no matter what type of diet you're on, is to eat a diet filled with colorful fruits and vegetables, okay? Because the actual pigment in those fruits and vegetables are the antioxidants. So once again, another kind of thing that I think everybody can follow that I think is universal. And then inflammation. I mentioned chronic inflammation, big cause of aging of the skin. One big thing that fights chronic inflammation are healthy fats. And so focusing on healthy sources of fat like omega-3 fatty acid, rich like fish, and then monounsaturated fatty acids like avocados, olives, olive oil, nuts and seeds. All of those are great for the skin. And so that's kind of how I look overall at looking at diet. And that's part of my book, that we've talked about Younger for Life. It's not so much saying, hey, this is the only diet that you can eat. If you're, you should go paleo or you should go vegan or you should go keto, but focusing on those kind of groups of foods and making sure you increase certain amounts of those foods and then reduce certain amounts of other ones that aren't so good for you.
The first of the 5 pillars was nutrient deficiencies.
Yes.
When it comes to looking and feeling our best, what are the most common nutrient deficiencies you see?
So really the first thing I always focus on, and it's not so much, I guess, a deficiency so much as it is collagen. As it is just, once again, the collagen of our skin. And so that's always the first thing I start with. And then once again, going for that macronutrient of the protein. And we can talk about collagen supplements if you'd like. But when you are looking at the actual nutrient deficiencies that you see, both in studies as well as in the skin, there was actually a study that looked at the fruits and vegetables, our produce, from the years 1950 to 1999. And it actually looked at the nutritional content in the fruits and vegetables throughout those 49 years. And they found that there were 6 specific nutrients that our food is much significantly lower today than it was back 50 years prior to that. And 3 of those that really stand out that I do think impact the skin are vitamin C. Okay. Number 1, vitamin C, that's an antioxidant as well as absolutely essential to the production of collagen, protein, which I just mentioned, and iron. Iron's another part of it as well. So we do know that there are now studies that do prove that this idea that our soil is not as is depleted of nutrients, and so you're creating fruits and vegetables that are not as nutritious as they used to be. It's not just an idea, it's not just a belief, it is something that is now being supported by actual studies.
For somebody who is following a diet template along with what we're talking about here today, do you feel like, given the depletion of the nutrients in the food supply, supplementation these days is a necessity to thrive?
Yeah, I think, so what can you do to add more nutrients? Well, you can eat more healthy food, obviously, but, you don't want to overeat, obviously. That's not an issue. There are studies that do show that eating organic foods, you are going to get a slightly greater amount of nutrients from organic produce than you will from conventionally grown produce. But definitely supplementation is something that I'm a fan of. Now, I'm not a biohacker. I'm not somebody that takes 50 pills a day and stuff like that. I've got friends of mine who are. For me, when I look at it is that my followers as well as my patients, I think that the 99% of the population is not open to biohacking their way to health. So for me, what I do is I do focus on certain basic supplements that are pretty much available for everybody. The first one we mentioned is collagen supplements. And because I'm more focused on the skin and aging, for me, I think that's real important. Now, collagen, as you and I know, is controversial. There are doctors out there who are not fans of collagen. If I post about it on social media, essentially I always get comments from so many people. I talked to my family doctor about collagen and they said it doesn't work, or they say that your stomach acids will destroy it. There's no proof of it. And the question of whether their science supports the use of collagen supplements to improve your skin was a big question. And 10, 15 years ago, if you were to bring it up, then I think it's valid to say, you know what, science is equivocal. We don't know whether collagen supplements work. But that's not true anymore. There have been many, many studies now that do support the fact that collagen supplements do help in the health of your skin. And so, for example, there was a meta-analysis in 2021 of over 1,100 people who took a hydrolyzed collagen peptide supplement for 90 days and found a statistically significant improvement in the hydration of their skin as well as in fine lines and wrinkles. There was a more recent meta-analysis of over 1,700 people published just last year, 2023, showing basically the same thing. And there are even studies where people will take a hydrolyzed collagen supplement for a couple of months, and then they actually will biopsy their skin or take samples of their blood and find an increased risk of collagen in the bloodstream, as well as in procollagen, which is pre-collagen, in the actual skin itself. And so we do know that collagen supplements do work. So that's the first supplement that I always recommend that people start. And then I focus on 4 other ones that are very simple, that are very easy. I think pretty much everybody should be able to take. A good quality multivitamin, once again, nutrient depletion, a daily probiotic, at least 3 billion colony-forming units a day, a omega-3 fatty acid supplement to once again support those healthy inflammation-fighting fats, and then ideally an antioxidant supplement as well, one that contains a variety of antioxidants. Now, once again, we're also targeting that oxidation and the free radical processes.
If you're enjoying this episode, let me know by clicking like and subscribe below. Thank you so much, and now back to the show. When it comes to using collagen as a supplement, you mentioned the controversy when you post about it. Do you feel like, because collagen is a protein, do you feel like when we ingest that, it's getting broken down into the amino acids, and we could get a similar effect by having amino acids in a different form? Or do you think there's something special about collagen that is, the integrity of it is maintained through to help, rebuild collagen, say, in the skin?
And that's a really good question. I think one of the arguments that people have is, why do you have to take a collagen supplement? Why not just increase the amount of protein that you eat? And the truth is that we do not have studies that I know of, at least, that have compared increasing the amount of protein you eat to taking a hydrolyzed collagen supplement. Now, backing up, the question that you have too is, how do you know that it's getting absorbed into your body? How does that all work? Well, collagen itself is a large protein, and it's a protein that your body is not just going to absorb. Some people will buy collagen creams, and collagen creams are, unlike collagen oral supplementation, collagen creams don't do anything at all, okay? Because it's such a large protein, you put it on the surface of your skin, it will not get through that barrier function of your skin. Your skin is meant to be a barrier. It's not meant to absorb things. And so collagen creams are basically moisturizers. You don't want to spend excess money on a collagen cream. Now, collagen supplements are a bit different, and it's true that it's a large protein. And the question is how do you know that protein, if you take it, doesn't just pass through your GI tract because it's such a large protein, that is it going to get broken down into those amino acids and those smaller peptides to actually get absorbed through your gut lining? And that's why I always recommend, if you are going to take a collagen supplement, to take a hydrolyzed collagen supplement. And what that means essentially is you take that large collagen protein and you break it down into smaller amino acids, which are single proteins, as well as groups of those, which are peptides. And that's why they actually break them down into the hydrolyzing process, is so that you can actually make it more bioabsorbable and get that in your bloodstream. And the studies that I've looked at that do show significant improvement in the skin after taking collagen supplements typically all use hydrolyzed collagen supplements. Now, interestingly enough, bone broth is a favorite of so many of our friends. And, I like bone broth. I've got friends of mine who swear by bone broth and improvement in their skin after drinking bone broth. Well, bone broth, we know, is almost pure collagen. And because when good bone broth is cooled down, it will almost solidify into gelatin. And that is basically the collagen. That's also how you know that your bone broth is high quality, because if you buy a bone broth at a store and you cool it down and it's still a liquid, then it's probably not so good. Now, the fact is that if you say, hey, we have friends of ours who say, oh, you drink bone broth, it's great for your skin. There are actually no studies to show that drinking bone broth will improve the quality of your skin or the collagen in your skin. But there are no studies to show that it won't do that. There just aren't any studies that I have seen that have been published on bone broth in the skin, period. And so, I think that it would make sense. I think it would be a very reasonable conclusion after seeing the studies with collagen to think that bone broth would do the same thing. But once we just don't have the actual studies for it.
What I really like about your approach and your book is this two-pronged approach to looking young and feeling great, which is the internal, like we've been talking about today, and the external, and
Mhm.
meshing those together. If you were to try and break those apart and give a percent for each, what do you feel like makes the biggest difference when it comes to how radiant our skin looks?
Ooh, that's a good. I've not had anybody ask that before. So I have not seen, so as a doctor, as a physician, I always want to look at, okay, is there a study that has looked at something like that? And I have not ever seen any type of study or anybody ever quoted on something like that before. So if I had to make a guess, how much of the appearance of your skin is internally motivated versus externally altered, I would probably say realistically 40-60. 40% comes from the inside and 60 actually maybe on the outside. Just because of the amount of changes that you can get with surface treatments can cover up a lot of kind of bad habits and a bad lifestyle. But if you have certain issues with your skin, fine lines and wrinkles, sun damage, age spots, saggy skin, then changing your diet and taking supplements isn't going to, make a dramatic change to that. Yes, can your skin look more vibrant? Yes. Can it look healthier? Yes. Can you get a more of a rosy glow to your cheeks? Definitely yes. But can you get rid of spots? No. Will it make fine lines, your crow's feet lines go away? No. So I guess if I had to make, a educated estimation, I'd probably say 40% is what comes from the inside and 60 is what we can alter on the outside.
For somebody tuning in that's doing a lot of the dietary stuff we've talked about in supplements, what would you say are the biggest things if working with the skin from the outside in is new to them? Maybe they just wash their face with soap and
Yeah.
maybe put on a moisturizer. What are some of the biggest needle movers that they can start implementing from outside in?
Yeah, and I think what I usually try to encourage people is to start with the easy stuff and then work your way up from there. It really is a stepwise process. It's like those patients who come to see me, they have money in their hand. They go, I want a facelift. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, let's start at the basics first. Because you're not going to do yourself a favor once again, building the spire at the top of your house first if you don't have an actual foundation and a first floor and even a second floor first. So when you're looking at skincare and if you're building that overall house of anti-aging, once again, the foundation is going to be the food. That first floor is really going to be skincare. The supplements and stuff I consider is in the same version with food because I think food and supplements basically go together. That's the foundation. And then that first floor is really going to be skincare, is taking good care of your skin. And the first thing I encourage people, if you are like you're saying, okay, hey, you know what? I'm kind of skincare naive. I don't really do a whole lot. What should I start by doing? There's one thing that we did several years ago is we took people who are quote unquote ordinary people who aren't getting treatments at their local med spa regularly and stuff like that. And we put them on a very simple skincare routine. And this was a skincare routine that literally took just 2 minutes a day. And we put them on this skincare routine. We took photos of them prior to starting it. And then 2 months later, after doing the skincare routine, we took follow-up pictures of them. And then we actually put them on Instagram and we asked people, what do you think about this before and after? And, do they look older? Do they look the same age? Do they look younger? And how much younger do you think they look? And we found that they looked upwards of 5 years younger after 2 months of this very simple skincare routine. So we nicknamed it the 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. So this is what it is. Every morning, you want to start by cleansing your skin with a cleanser appropriate for your skin type. And so if you've got oily skin, then you want to use a more foaming type of a cleanser. That's going to help to control the excess oil of the skin. If you've got more sensitive skin or drier skin, then you want to use a more milky or hydrating cleanser. Second step is you want to apply an antioxidant serum. And I mentioned earlier, one of the main agers of our skin, oxidation and free radicals. And so you can fight that process by ingesting antioxidant-rich foods like colorful fruits and vegetables. But you can also fight that process from the outside by applying an antioxidant supplement like antioxidant serum like vitamin C. And so most skincare companies have vitamin C serums. I always encourage to use clean beauty products, but there's so many out there, and they're usually not that expensive. The key with the vitamin C serum is you want to make sure that it is in a container that does not allow light in. Just like if you take an apple and you cut it in half and you set it out in the sun, it's going to turn brown pretty quickly. It oxidizes. That's the same thing that can happen with these serums, with vitamin C serums. They can oxidize. And if they're brown, then it may not work quite as well anymore. And so you start by cleansing, then you do an antioxidant serum, and then ideally I do recommend a sunscreen afterwards if you're going to be out, at least SPF 30. And we can talk about that and the controversy of the sunscreen as well if you'd like. But that's all you have to do in the morning. Cleanse, serum, vitamin C serum, and then a sunscreen if you're going to be out. What do you do in the evening? So important. You got to cleanse your skin every evening. If you only cleanse your skin once a day, make sure it's in the evening because you got to get rid of the day's worth of dirt and grime and dust and pollution, and especially if you're wearing makeup. So after you cleanse your skin, then you want to apply some type of an anti-aging cream. The one that I recommend first and that most dermatologists and plastic surgeons recommend is a retinol. Retinol is a derivative of vitamin A. If you had to pick one anti-aging ingredient for a skincare cream, the majority of skincare specialists will say start with retinol. And so you apply the retinol at night. And then if you have dry skin, let's say you are living in Arizona and you've got dry skin and you want to moisturize it, by all means, throw a moisturizer on, but you don't have to. If let's say you've got oily skin and you live in New Orleans and it's in the summertime, you don't have to apply moisturizer on your skin if you don't want to, because your skin may have enough moisture already. And that's it at night. Cleanse or retinol, and then moisturizer if desired. And then the only other thing is once or twice a week, depending on how sensitive your skin is, ideally you want to exfoliate your skin with a gentle scrub or with some type of alpha hydroxy acid type of a peel. And that just helps get the skin turning over more quickly. Our skin cells take about 6 weeks or so when we're younger for them to be formed in the deeper layer of the skin and then to essentially go to the surface of the skin and slough off. But as we get older, that takes much longer and that process slows down. We get kind of a buildup of this dead skin at the surface. And so by exfoliating, you get rid of that upper layer of dead skin. That will actually send a cellular signal to the deeper layers of skin to cause it to turn over more quickly. And that's one reason why that slowdown of that exfoliation process is one of the reasons why as we get older, our skin gets rougher, it's drier, it's more wrinkly and all that. And that's really it. That's the simple 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. That's where I recommend people start first.
All right, let's come back to the morning. We cleanse, and then you mentioned this vitamin C or antioxidant serum.
Yes.
You did mention when we talked about collagen that putting it topically doesn't help, but just to clarify, in this case with vitamin C, it is effective on the skin.
Yes. Now, vitamin C is not going to alter the structure of your skin, okay? But what it's going to do is it's going to protect your skin from free radical damage. That's the big thing, and especially important if you're going to be out, let's say in the sun, if you are in an environment where you're exposed to, like I said, cigarette smoke, automobile exhaust, different types of fumes. The idea with vitamin C is it's going to be more protective throughout the day. So you want to protect your skin in the morning, and the evening, that's when you want to try to reverse the aging of your skin. So protecting for the day. At night, you want to then fight off and reverse the aging process at night.
Okay. So when it comes to this serum with the vitamin C, anything else we want to look for that's in that? And is it usually based like in an oil? So it's something you're just going to rub on your face?
So a serum is technically going to be much lighter. Most people, oils are going to be more in that moisturizer category, like ointment type stuff. So ideally for something like that, now there's some people who do like cleansing oils, which is a little bit different. But really with vitamin C, that's going to be a serum, which is going to feel a little more watery, although it can be moisturizing, but it's not going to feel like you've got like greasiness to your skin at all. That's the nice thing with serums. Now, one key is if you want to biohack that just a little bit, then you want to ideally find one that has vitamin C and E with it. The benefit of that is there are some studies that show that if you combine vitamin C and E, you can get actually a synergistic effect in the antioxidants. And so one of the big things, our top seller, I've got my own skincare line called Youn Beauty. And by far, our top seller is our CE antioxidant serum because it does combine both and you get this synergistic antioxidant effect to it.
Okay, talk about the difference between a toner and the serum,
Yeah.
because a toner is something that comes up even in the conventional skincare world. Is this different?
Yes. Yeah. And that's a great question because a lot of people don't know the difference. So it used to be that people believe that after you cleanse, you had to tone your skin. And toners traditionally are also called astringents, or basically they had alcohol in them. And so people would cleanse their skin and then they would take a cotton ball, put the toner on it, and then put it on their face. And it would make their face feel super clean and even kind of cold because it's alcohol. Um, but the problem with that is as we realized, is that just like our gut has a microbiome, our skin has a microbiome too. And when you're using alcohol on your skin like that, you are essentially killing off that microbiome. Well, we know that the microbiome of our gut is incredibly important to the health of our entire body. We know that we're learning that the microbiome of our skin is also very important to the health of the skin, but we are very early in our understanding of exactly what that microbiome does. I don't think it's as important to our health as a microbiome of our gut, but I do think it's still very important. And so, really, these types of toners um, have not, they've kind of gone by the wayside to an extent. The other issue with it is a lot of people who have acne or really oily prone skin would oftentimes use a toner like this to try to get rid of the oil. And you use the alcohol that gets rid of the oil, and then you would feel then that was you're doing a good thing. But the problem is then the skin would take this as a signal that it does not have enough oil because it's all gone, and would actually create more oil. And so people who have oily issues with their skin would find that the oil issues would actually get worse when they would use an alcohol-based astringent or a toner. So nowadays, the good quality toners, you can still find astringents and stuff out there, but the good quality toners are not meant so much to, once again, get rid of the oil of your skin and to give that feeling, but sometimes they're meant more to balance the pH of your skin. In the end, you don't really need to use a toner. You can if you want, and there's some toners that have antioxidants in them and alpha hydroxy acids, which can help create with some exfoliation. But it is an added step that if you are kind of a skincare enthusiast and you want to do it, then by all means, go ahead. But if you want to limit the types of products that you use, especially if on a budget, then that's definitely one of the ones that you don't necessarily have to do.
You brought up acne there. For somebody that is battling that right now, and that's a challenge they're facing, anything additional within this protocol they want to add in or take out to modify for that specifically?
Yeah, acne is really tough because acne is so multifactorial. You get teenagers who have acne, and a lot of that is based off of hormones. And so yes, there are things like you can add, like a salicylic acid type of a wash, where salicylic acid is a type of acid that can really get into your pores and clean your pores out. That can overall help. But the problem with acne, once again, is some of that is hormone mediated. Acne in and of itself also is an inflammatory process. And so we are finding that, a lot of teenagers who have severe acne, what type of food are they eating? Oftentimes they're eating foods that are very inflammatory to the skin and the entire body, like going to eat fast food and that type of a thing. And then the other part of acne is we do know that there's a connection between acne and our microbiome of our gut. And so making sure you have a healthy gut microbiome, taking a daily probiotic, occasionally trying to eat some fermented foods, all that can really be helpful. When you're looking at a skincare regimen, it really does depend on the severity of acne. If you're somebody like myself, where every once in a while I get a pimple, I'm not necessarily going to alter my skincare routine for that. The other kind of group, let's say somebody with severe cystic acne, let's say you've got some teenagers where the acne is just so severe and cystic. Uh, unfortunately, and I'm not a fan of it in general, but going on Accutane for some kids is their only real option. And Accutane in and of itself is a very strong medication. But you get people, and for me, I see people on the other end of it where they have grown up and they've had terrible cystic acne, and their parents have not brought them in to get treated. Now they're an adult, they come see me with all these acne scars. It is really, really tough to improve those. And so the big thing that I recommend, if you've got a child who has severe acne, especially if it's cystic, you really want to get them seen by a dermatologist. Yes, start with a lot of things that you talk about on your podcast, with cleaning up the diet, focusing on the microbiome, getting on a good skincare routine like I'm recommending, getting on a salicylic acid wash and stuff like that. But sometimes that's not enough because some of it is real hormone mediated. And what you want to avoid is that acne becoming cystic and getting out of control and eventually causing a lifetime of your child having issues with the appearance of their skin. It's best to prevent it than it is to try to treat it later.
Okay. You quickly touched on the skin microbiome, and you mentioned that it's not necessarily as important as the gut microbiome. But is there anything we can do to accentuate it or make sure we're maintaining it? Like we've gotten into so far with collagen not being effective on the skin,
Yeah.
vitamin C being effective. How do you feel about using, say, like a probiotic or cream with probiotics in it to help with the microbiome of the skin?
I think that's a really good idea. I think the first step, though, is always prevention. And so it's making sure that you don't, let's say, over cleanse your skin. There is a tendency for people to be over aggressive with cleansing their skin. Once again, doing it twice a day, I think is good. But once again, you don't have to over cleanse in general. There are some people who will do double cleanses to get rid of makeup. I think that's fine. But when you're being overly aggressive with your skin, when you're, let's say, using really harsh scrubs regularly, then that in and of itself can also damage the microbiome and the actual skin's barrier function. So the first thing really is to be gentle with your skin overall. There are definitely probiotic based products that I think are helpful. We don't have any studies on them necessarily. In my skincare line, we do have a probiotic moisturizer that we do recommend for people, and people do find that it feels kind of soothing to their skin. But once again, I don't know of any studies that have found that, let's say, that using a probiotic-rich moisturizer is going to slow down the formation of wrinkles. If you're somebody and your skin overall is kind of prone to inflammation, then would using a probiotic-based cream or moisturizer potentially help? It's not going to hurt, and I'd say why not? So I think overall, once again, I think we're early in our understanding of what the effect of the microbiome of the skin is. We do know that there are certain skin conditions that appear to be affected by it, but we're still very, very early. So yes, definitely being gentler with your skin, not doing aggressive scrubs, avoiding astringents, alcohol-based products on your skin, super important. And then once again, if you want to be proactive, then really kind of promoting the microbiome by using a probiotic-rich type of a moisturizer may help. But once again, no science to show that I know of that it 100% is proven to.
All right, let's move into step 3 in the morning, putting on a sunblock or sunscreen. So let's start off defining what the two different terms mean and then get into specifics, things we want to avoid in that realm,
Yeah.
chemicals and such, and then what we can look for in a quality product.
Yeah, so there is a difference between sunscreen and sunblock, although most people and even doctors will interchange those two terms kind of, without worrying about it. So technically, a sun protection can be either chemical or it can be physical. Physical sun protection, otherwise known as sunblocks, are meant to actually sit on the surface of your skin and block the sun's rays from getting to your skin. And so it's a physical barrier. And the traditional sunblocks are, if you remember way back in the day, you'd have lifeguards who would have this white paste over their face, over their noses, and that was a physical sunblock. And typically it's zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. And they are very effective at blocking those sun's rays from getting to your skin. It's the same thing like I just made a TikTok today on people using butt paste on their face now. And that's zinc oxide. It's that white paste that you put on your baby's bottoms to prevent diaper rashes. It's the same idea. But anyways, that's what a sunblock is. And sunblocks themselves, in general, are believed to be very safe. They don't absorb into your skin. But the negatives of these sunblocks is that they can be very tacky and thick. And so they don't feel so good sometimes on the skin. Because of that, they have created micronized versions of it where they're smaller particles and they feel lighter than they used to be. So they're not that big, thick white paste anymore, but they can still leave a little bit of a whitish hue on your skin. So somebody like yourself who's Caucasian, you can use a mineral or a physical sunblock and you can apply on your face and you may see no change to the color of your skin. But if you're a person of color, that may not be the case. If you apply that on somebody who has darker skin, it may give them kind of a ghostly hue. And that's not going to be all that desired for a lot of people. So when do you use sunblocks? My recommendation is to use a sunblock, number one, on your children, period. So if you've got kids, especially if they're small, and you're at the beach, they don't care if they look pasty. They're just having fun running into the water and playing in the sand. Okay. So for your children, ideally, you want to use a physical sunblock. And most good children's sunscreens are basically physical sunblocks. Okay. But what about sunscreens? Well, sunscreens are going to be the more controversial of the two. So sunscreens essentially are absorbed into your skin. And when the sun's rays then hit the surface of your skin, that chemical sunscreen creates a chemical reaction to essentially destroy or neutralize the negative effects of the sun. Okay. So it has to be absorbed through your skin, and your skin will absorb it. And there are very different types of it. Now, two of them are of concern, and that would be oxybenzone and octinoxate. These are the two of the most popular chemicals in chemical sunscreen. Oxybenzone is specifically as in a huge amount of sunscreens. And we do know that they absorb into the bloodstream. There are actually studies that show that the vast majority of people have it in their urine. If you test them, they'll have microscopic amounts of it in their urine. And there are beliefs that oxybenzone and octinoxate can be potential hormone disruptors. On top of that, that they can essentially mimic hormones in your body. On top of that, we do believe that they may also impact the health of the coral reefs. Because of that, if you go, let's say, to Australia or Hawaii or some of the Caribbean islands, they may not allow you to wear oxybenzone or octinoxate in your sunscreens. There are other sunscreens, though, that are not of as concern, and those would be avobenzone and Megzoryl XL. Those are two that, if you look at the different groups that have looked at the safety of the chemicals in our skincare products, have usually gone through fine, without any evidence that they can be potential hormone disruptors. So avobenzone and Megzoryl XL. And so those are the ones that I would recommend for, let's say, a person of color who doesn't want their skin color to be changed. Then use a chemical sunblock or sunscreen with those components to it, and you should be pretty safe. If, let's say, you don't want to wear something that's heavier and you want something a bit lighter, then that's a good option for you too. The thing that I really encourage people to avoid, something that we see at the beach whenever we go, is you see parents spraying their kids down with sunscreen. And now you're potentially taking, let's say, oxybenzone, you're creating this huge plume of dust that they're breathing into their developing lungs. That is what you really want to avoid. And so if, let's say, you've got a bottle of sunscreen, and let's say if it's a chemical, oxybenzone, octinoxate, I just wouldn't recommend using it on your kids unless you just have nothing else available at that time. But if you have, let's say, a spray that's mineral based, which a lot of them are, a sunblock, then spray it into your hand and then apply it onto your children that way. Don't have them breathing that into their lungs.
When we went through the steps, you marked this as the third step in the morning, which leads me to believe this is a daily thing. But obviously, there's a lot of variables here. How much time the person's going to spend outside, their skin color, lots of different variables. How do we know when we get to the point where this is a concern?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know you're in Michigan and it's winter right now. Is this something you're doing if you're going to be in the office all day? Or is it just if you're going to be, on vacation at the beach?
So I have friends of mine who are dermatologists, and God bless them. They put on sunscreen every morning, even if they're going to be in the basement somewhere all day. That's their thing. I'm realistic too, because for me, do I wear sunscreen every day? No. If I'm going to be out in the sun, am I going to put it on? Yes. Do I have my kids put on if they're just going to be at school all day? Not necessarily. It really is up to them. And so I think really, there's a number of ways to look at this. And I think there are extremes on both ends. I have friends of mine who are biohackers who won't wear any sunscreen at all, and they'll put lard on their face. Like, I don't get it. That's their thing. That's fine. And then I have dermatologist friends of mine who are aghast when they find out you don't wear sunscreen every day. What is wrong with you? The way I look at number one is that I'm a plastic surgeon. I can't tell you how many patients who I've treated who've had skin cancer of their face. You do not want skin cancer of your face. Okay. So what happens? I get patients who come in, hey, I used to get a lot of sun when I was younger, but I'm wearing sunscreen now when I go out. And they go, I got this little thing on my nose that's not healing. It's just this little wound that's been there for 5-6 months. And it's like, oh crap, like that's a sign. If you've got a non-healing wound, it just doesn't heal. It just keeps scabbing over and keeps oozing. That's a potential sign of a skin cancer. And so what happens then? How do you treat skin cancer? Is you, in general, you cut it out. And so I get patients who come to see me with this little dot somewhere on their nose or their forehead or their cheek, and they get it taken off, and there's a huge hole in their face, or half their nostril is gone, or part of their eyelid is gone. You do not want that to happen to you, period. Okay. So I'm all for, I think there's so many therapeutic benefits of the sun. Wake up in the morning, seeing that sun, getting the circadian rhythms in line. I think that's all great. I live in Michigan, as you mentioned. There's something therapeutic in February when the sun comes out and you're like, oh my gosh, you feel it on your skin. Like it helps your mood. It's important, as well as for vitamin D production. But at the same time, you do not want to get a skin cancer on your face, especially. One of my favorite actors is Hugh Jackman, and I think he's the most talented man in Hollywood. He's had multiple skin cancers taken off his face, and he's a great looking guy. And I just fear for him that one day this skin cancer is going to be on the tip of, on his nostril, and they're going to have to remove part of the nostril, or on the eyelid, and the eyelid's going to be pulled down afterwards. That can happen to any of us. So just be really careful and use your judgment. If you're going to be out in the sun for a significant period of time, definitely want to wear your sunscreen, because once again, you don't want to face the reality in the future of getting a cancer like that. So I think, like most things, like there are extremes in both circles, but I think there's a reasonable moderate place in the middle that most people can find. And the final thing I really say about it is I feel for us here in the United States, because our FDA has not been great with approving sunscreens. We don't have a lot available here, and the ones we have are not great as far as how they feel on our skin. If you go to Korea, if you go to Europe, they have so many other options available. And those, a lot of times, it's like for us, if I put a moisturizer on my skin in the morning, I don't notice it that I have it on later in the day. Good moisturizers, good products, you just forget that they're there. But whenever you put sunscreen on, you don't really forget. You can always kind of feel it. And that's not necessarily the case when you go to other countries, And so I do believe that the FDA has really not done us a service in that we do need to get more options available for us that can be more comfortable as well.
And I think it's important to keep in mind too, you took us to the extreme of skin cancer, but there's also getting an acute sunburn and then sunspots,
Yes.
which are more, the way I understand it from reading your book, are more cosmetic.
Yes.
And they don't come out right away.
No.
So talk about those and how it's not just about acute or cancer. There's also damage to the skin that accumulates over time.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that that I find very interesting. I get patients who come in to see me, and let's say they have a bad habit. Like, let's say they're a smoker. And I'll say, hey, look, if you smoke, you're going to get emphysema. It's going to cause COPD. It'll even increase your risk of a heart attack. I don't care. And they keep smoking. I go, but if I say, hey, if you smoke, I can't give you a facelift. Oh, well, in that case, I'm going to quit. So sometimes it's actually helpful to use our own vanity to push ourselves to lead a healthier life. And so, when you're talking about sunspots, that is kind of one of those situations where when sunspots, age spots, liver spots, they're all different names for the same thing. Essentially, when we get excess ultraviolet light from the sun hit our skin, the melanin, which is what creates the color of our skin, that will actually neutralize those sun's rays. Okay. And that's why some people, if you have darker skin, you have more melanin, you're less likely to get a burn, because that melanin will try to neutralize those rays of the sun. If you have lighter skin, then you've got some melanin still there, unless you've got vitiligo or you have albino skin. But most people, you have melanin there, and you can get this clumping of the melanin when you have excess sun exposure. And those are the sunspots or the age spots that you get. Interestingly enough, there is a very dose-dependent relationship there, where the more sun you get, the more you'll see it. And let's say if you go out for a vacation in the Caribbean, you may come home and see spots pretty quickly. But there also, I think, is a long-term effect that I've seen in people as well, where I have patients of mine who are in their 50s, and they're like, I wear a huge hat, I wear sunscreen every day, I don't get much sun, I'm really aware of it. Why do I have all these sunspots kind of coming out? And usually I'll ask them, like, when you were in your 20s, did you lay out in the sun? Like, oh, yeah, yeah. I just put baby oil on my skin. I got all these burns and stuff. So I do think we also develop and we start seeing some of the damage that we do when we're much younger, when we're in our 20s, show up when we're even in our 40s. I haven't seen this be proven, but I do feel like that's what I've seen in my practice. And I do believe that that's the case as well. And so really with sunspots or age spots, if you've got those, couple of things that I recommend. The first thing is there are great brightening creams out there that if you're really patient, that can help to lighten those spots. We have one on my own line, Youn Beauty. We've got a brightening cream. I use it every morning and every night. I do think it really helps. But it's slow. I think it's in general, the creams are better in general for prevention as they are for treatment, although they can definitely do both. The other thing is if you do have access to it, I do recommend IPL. That's intense pulse light. And so this is the first treatment that we've talked about on your podcast. But IPL basically is a light-based device that is at a lot of different med spas, doctors' offices, where essentially it uses light energy to target that pigment, to heat that pigment up and destroy it. And then your body essentially will slough it off, usually after about a week. And so that's kind of an inside-outside approach to taking care of these spots. The inside approach is using a cream to help reduce the melanin and the body's production of melanin. And then using on the outside, the IPL, essentially the light-based device, to help target that pigment and get rid of it. The reason why you want to combine the two is if you want a quick result, and the IPL will do that for you. But once you get the IPL treatment, its effects are done. Like, that's it. It's not like it's going to prevent new spots from coming on as you get older.
As you talk about the IPL, it gets me thinking about red light as a therapy.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit in? Obviously, IPL is a totally different thing, but within the same umbrella,
Yeah.
how do you look at red light therapy?
I think red light therapy is fantastic. It's very interesting, Jesse, because if you go to a plastic surgery conference and you go up to a random plastic surgeon, hey, what do you think about red light therapy? They may look at you with a blank stare because, interestingly enough, red light therapy is not talked about in plastic surgery at all. Dermatologists, I think, have a much better understanding of it. But then you go to a holistic medical conference, and everybody talks about red light therapy. So it's very interesting. So what does the science show about red light? Well, the belief is that red light therapy, the energy from the red light is transfused essentially to the cells. So let's say if you're treating your skin, it's transfused to the skin cells, and it causes the mitochondria to produce more ATP. So essentially, it powers the mitochondria. The energy from the red light powers a mitochondria. So your cells essentially are creating more energy, and they're acting essentially more youthfully. So that's a belief kind of on that kind of subcellular basis. But what do you see actually on the surface? Well, there are studies that have been performed on red light therapy where they have done split face studies, where they take the face and they split it in half. In one half, they do a sham laser. And on the other half, they do red light therapy. And they have found that in as little as 1 month, you can see an improvement in the collagen and the elastin in the skin. And that's in as little as a month. Although I think realistically, if you're going to do red light therapy, expecting changes after more like 3 months is probably more realistic. Now, red light therapy, the great thing about red light therapy is there's so many ways to do it. You can get a handheld device that's really inexpensive that I'm not a fan of because they're usually kind of onerous to use because you can only treat a small portion at a time. You can get these kind of creepy backlit masks that you can wear. And I actually use that quite often. And one thing that I've recently done is use one of those masks. Usually it goes about 10 minutes. And then I just, for those 10 minutes, meditate. And so I kind of like multitask where I get the red light therapy and meditate at the same time. There are tabletop type devices that you can use where it sits on a table and you just put your face in it and it treats your face with the red light for a good 10, 20 minutes. And then there are entire red light beds as well that you can get into at your med spa. Whichever one you find is affordable for you, is convenient for you, I encourage people to use it. I don't think there's a downside to red light therapy. And the great thing about it is that there's so many different options based off of what your budget is. You can buy a handheld device for as little as $50 to $100. Those good masks are going to cost more like $300 to $400, as well as good kind of tabletop larger devices.
How often are you using your mask?
Usually you want to use it every 2 to 3 days or so. You don't have to do it every day. And then I also have one for my head, for my hair too. That's a red light helmet. And that I do every other day as well.
You share a story in the book about your hair being on vacation with your wife, and you were doing a cliff jump, and she was perched a little bit higher than you, looking down at your hair and noticed that you were thinning.
Yeah.
Take me back to that point and talk about what happened there and what you've done since then, other than this red light helmet, to help with hair regrowth.
Yeah. So, years ago, I've been with my wife now. We started dating back in 1995 and we got married in 2000. So, what is it, 2000? So now we've been married over 23 years. We've been together 28. And a long time ago, we filled out these surveys of like, what is the most attractive quality that your partner has? Physical quality, physical feature. And she put his hair. So I've always prided myself that I've got a good full head of hair. And so then, just like you said, we were in the Caribbean on vacation a couple of years ago, and she was on a rock above me, and she gasped, and I'm like, "What?" Because she's shorter than me. She's 5'4". I'm 6 foot. She's like, "You're losing hair on top of your head." And I swear to God, Jesse, I almost slipped and fell off of the cliff, and I could have killed myself. So that was shocking because my brother is, he's gotten real thin hair because my grandpa was bald, but I never had it. So I always assumed that I would have a full, thick head of hair all my life. And so I took pictures of the top of my head and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm losing hair on the top of my head. It's thinning out. And so for me, like you, I want to go all natural if I can. And so it's very easy to get on minoxidil and get a prescription for Propecia and stuff like that. So I'm going to do this naturally and see what I can do. So the first thing, when you look at losing hair and thinning hair, the first thing you want to think about is stress. There are people who have something called telogen effluvium, which is stress-induced hair loss. Now, I'm a surgeon. I'm always under stress. I'm always worrying about my patients. Even if they're doing great, I worry about them. And unfortunately, Jesse, there's nothing I can do to stop that. It's just the way I am. But what can I do to help reduce stress? I can meditate. I can do yoga and other types of things like that. And so, if you're listening today and you go, yeah, I've got thinning hair over the last few months, first look and see, is there anything that has changed in your life that has stressed you out? And if the answer is yes, then look into ways to help relieve that, whether it's therapy, meditation, yoga, or other options. But that's not always the case, okay? And for me, like I said, I can't get rid of that stress. It's my job. So then the second thing you want to look at with hair loss is you want to look at nutritional deficiencies. So you could go see a functional medicine physician. They can draw a bunch of labs and see what are you deficient in. Iron deficiency can lead to hair loss. Zinc deficiency is believed to also contribute to it. There's many different things. But honestly, I'm lazy and I don't want to go to see a functional medicine physician and pay all this money for it. So there are actual supplements out there that are made specifically for hair loss. And the one that I use is Nutrafol. Nutrafol has supplements that are specifically for hair loss. They kind of give you everything that you need. They have one for men. They have one for premenopausal women, one for peri and postmenopausal women, and they even have one for vegans. And so I started taking that supplement every day. It's 4 pills a day, and it has things like vitamin C, zinc, biotin, and all these other goodies in it. And then I started using a red light and LED helmet. These are actually ones that have been studied a lot, and we call it low light lasers. Low light lasers, the belief with low light lasers is kind of they're like cold lasers, what they call them, similar to red light. And there are a ton of studies that show that using this type of laser helmets can definitely improve the thickness of your hair. And so I started using that. That's about a 25-minute treatment every other day. And so I'm sitting on the couch in the evening every other day. I put the helmet on, I turn it on, and watch TV. And that's what I started with. I also started shampooing with a rosemary oil-based shampoo. There was a study that compared rosemary oil versus minoxidil, aka Rogaine, in people with hair loss, and found very similar results in people who use rosemary oil as with minoxidil, but with less skin irritation. And so I started basically shampooing with a rosemary oil-based shampoo. And my hair is not as thick as it was before, but I am definitely have noticed a significant improvement overall. Since then, Jesse, I have made some other changes, things I've tried. I've tried some micro stamping of my scalp where you basically make kind of like needle roller type of pokes into it. I have used different serums and even oils in the hair to help with that as well. I have toyed with PRP. You can inject PRP, platelet-rich plasma, and that can really help with it. And I have toyed even with the thought of trying some topical minoxidil because it's over the counter now, but I haven't done that yet. So those are some of the things that I would look into.
How long's this journey been so far? A couple of years?
It's been about 2 years, I think now. I think two years, maybe 2.5,
And it
something like
sounds
that.
like you haven't just halted, but you've regained a little bit of hair.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely halted. It hasn't gotten worse, and I do believe I've had a significant improvement, but it's not to where I would love it to be, where it's like you can't even tell, like So, and I think that that's why I'm kind of trying some other things to see. I've had people who have just done the Nutrafol and let's say the Helmet have had great improvements, but you do have to wait a good 4 months before you really start seeing it. And then other people where it takes everybody's, I think, a little different in what they need and how aggressive they should be.
The other challenge within the hair realm is graying.
Yes.
Any research showing any of the stuff you're doing helping with that too?
It's interesting because that's something I've thought about as well. And there are companies that create supplements that claim that they can reverse or slow down the graying and reverse the graying, actually, which I find fascinating. And when I actually looked at what was in those supplements, it was pretty much the same stuff that was in Nutrafol anyway. So I don't know. The Nutrafol hasn't, to my extent, to my knowledge, tested it on reversing graying. But there is a belief that um, if you give the same similar types of nutrients. And what these are essentially are they're going to be vitamins, antioxidants. They're going to be healthy oils, anti-inflammatory types of oils and stuff like that. Those are the types of things. And as far as a direct correlation, I haven't seen that yet. I am doing pretty well with grays. I have a little bit myself, but not bad. But I do believe that taking those may potentially help.
You talked about the stamping with the needles, and I know this is a therapy you can use on the skin of the face as
Yeah.
well. Talk more about what that is and what the benefit is there.
Yeah. So, for me, I started doing stamping. So really the needle treatment started with dermal rollers. Dermal rollers essentially are these handheld devices that almost look like little rolling pins, but the rolling pins that they have tiny little needles sticking out of them. Now, the length of the needle is super important, okay? And the fact that when you roll these on the skin, a lot of dermatologists are not fans of them because they tend to create a bit of a tearing effect versus, let's say, if you stamp, you're making specific little pokes straight in. And the idea behind those treatments in general, it's almost like a hormesis type of a thing, is by making these, what you're doing essentially is making tiny little pokes in the skin. This is creating acute trauma to the skin. When you traumatize the collagen of the skin, that collagen, as it heals in a tighter fashion. And so the way I describe it, it's kind of like the logs of a log cabin. And when you're young, your skin is like the collagen's like the logs of a log cabin. It's basically these fibers that are nice and tight and put together. And as we get older, those logs start to fray. They start to fall apart. And so when you actually undergo, let's say, microneedling or any of these other treatments, essentially, and I'll explain in a second, you're damaging the collagen, you're damaging those logs essentially and causing them as they are put back together to heal in a tighter fashion. And it's kind of like hormesis. It's kind of the idea of you put your body through a very controlled stress. And if that stress is controlled enough, your body will react to it by healing it and actually be stronger afterwards. Okay. And you see that with the skin. Now, like anything, if you stress the body too much, you can create permanent damage. Okay. So if you do a microneedling treatment and it's controlled, then you can cause that skin to heal in a tighter fashion. It's the same idea with laser treatments, same with chemical peels. Essentially, what you're doing with a laser is you are using heat to damage the skin. With a chemical peel, you're using an acid to damage the skin. Now, if you damage it too aggressively, you get scarring. Okay, now you've gone too far. But if you damage it just to the extent that it's not going to create scarring, then you can create a significant improvement because as it heals in a tighter fashion. So that's the idea behind microneedling. Now, stamping basically is a way to do it where you're not creating any tearing of the surface. And when you're looking at overall, looking at non-invasive types of treatments and the ones that I think are best bang for your bucks, number one in my list would be microneedling. So microneedling would be then taking that dermal roller, but instead of rolling the skin with these pins, you have a handheld device that you can tune so that those pins go into your skin a very specific depth, okay, to create the exact amount of trauma that you want to create. And that's what we do in doctors' offices as well as med spas. So you create this trauma to the skin, you're making these tiny little pokes. That's the basic treatment. And it's not that expensive because the cost of one of these devices is maybe 5 or 6 grand. You compare that to the price of a laser, which could be 200 grand. Now you're saying, hey, microneedling is not that expensive. You can get it sometimes for $100. Now, if you want to take that to the next level, when you're doing microneedling, you're taking the skin, you're making all these little pokes in the skin. So what these pokes can be used for now are conduits, so that if you apply something to the surface of the skin right afterwards, it can seep into those little holes, into those conduits, and actually treat the skin from the inside out. And so then people started doing microneedling with PRP overlying it. And so you would do the microneedling, make tiny little pokes in the skin, draw a person's blood, spin it down for the platelets. The platelets are chock full of growth factors. Now you've got concentrated growth factors. And then once you get the microneedling treatment done, immediately afterwards, you place the PRP onto the surface of the skin. That PRP will then seep into those tiny holes, and those growth factors will get into deeper skin to essentially anti-age the skin from the inside out. Okay. And that's why you may see people getting, like, they call it the vampire facial or the blood facial. That's why people do that, is you get kind of that twofold type of a treatment. Final thing is, if you want to take that to the next level, to the highest level, we have something called Morpheus 8, and that is radiofrequency microneedling. So now that needle that goes into your skin is insulated all the way up to the tip of the needle. And the tip of that needle emits radiofrequency energy or heat. So now when that needle goes into the skin, it emits heat. That heat, what does that do? Is it damages the collagen, and it causes the collagen to get even tighter than it would from just a needle poke. So for people who want to take that type of a treatment to the highest level, they'll do Morpheus 8, radiofrequency microneedling, and then even afterwards, you can apply PRP to the surface of that as well. So there's a lot of options here. The great thing about this is all using your body's own regenerative abilities to turn back the clock. And this is that term that I've used in the book many times called autojuvenation. And that's the fact that our bodies contain these immense regenerative abilities to rejuvenate itself naturally, but you have to unlock it by using the right tools and giving it the right environment.
Well, let's move up from there. That's our base. Let's move up in invasiveness. What other things can we look at along that hierarchy?
Yeah, so then the next things that you would look at, so really the basic thing is going to be, let's say, red light therapy at home. I think that's great. And if that's where all you do, then I think that's fantastic. For people who are listening and they're on a strict budget, or let's say they live in the country and they don't have access to a med spa, then red light therapy is a great way to get very nice changes at home. If you do have access to a med spa, but you want to do something that's minimally invasive, you want to use more of those autojuvenative processes, then I think microneedling is great. You take that to the next level with microneedling with PRP. If you want to get skin tightening with it, then add the Morpheus 8, that radiofrequency part to it. There are various lasers out there that I think are great for resurfacing the skin. Those are going to be more aggressive. They're going to be more expensive. I mentioned IPL, which is great for dark spots. But really, once you get past that kind of laser and the technology level, now you're getting into the injections. Okay. And if you're talking about injections, you have to start with Botox. Botox is the most popular cosmetic treatment in the history of the world. Every year, over 7 million Americans get Botox injections. And we've been doing it in my office for the last 19 years. I've been in practice. It's our number one most popular treatment. We've probably, 20, 30,000 at least have never had a severe complication from it. You've had a lot of people on your podcast, good friends of mine who are healthcare influencers who get Botox regularly. But I'm happy to chat with you about any concerns, because I know that your audience, as well as mine, always has concerns about anything that's not quote unquote natural.
Well, yeah, let's take it from 101 and talk about what it is.
Sure.
And the areas that it'd be used typically and what it does.
So Botox is basically the trade name for a botulinum toxin. And this is a toxin, a type of protein that is produced by a bacteria called Clostridium botulinum. For many years, it was used for spastic muscle disorders. And so people would have, let's say, esophageal spasm, And you can inject Botox to help relax those muscles. You get muscle contractions, let's say even after burns and things like that, then that can help with some of that. And then there was a husband and wife team. The husband, I think, is the ophthalmologist, and the wife was a dermatologist. And the husband would inject Botox into the eyelid and the eye muscles to help reducing spasm. And what they noticed, and this was many years ago, I think it was in the 80s, they noticed that when they injected it into those muscles, maybe early 90s, that the wrinkles started to smooth out in those areas. And it made sense because the botulinum toxin, what it does is it prevents the transmission of nerve impulses to the muscle. So essentially it blocks the nerve from stimulating the muscles to contract. And that effect lasts about 3 to 4 months. Now, Jesse, there's certain muscles of our face that are certain wrinkles of our face that are created by muscles contracting. These are called dynamic wrinkles. So we have wrinkles that are called dynamic and wrinkles that are static. Dynamic wrinkles are wrinkles that are not there unless your muscles are actively contracting. Static wrinkles are wrinkles that are there just by gravity, okay? So what are some dynamic wrinkles? Crow's feet wrinkles, those are dynamic because they're caused by squinting of your eyes and when you smile. The frown lines between your eyebrows are dynamic wrinkles. They're caused by muscles. When you're angry at your kids or you're stern at your dog, then you create those lines. And then the horizontal forehead lines, those are dynamic wrinkles caused by elevating your eyebrows. So if you were to inject Botox into any of these three muscles, then you can prevent the transmission of nerve impulses to those muscles, and those wrinkles then will smooth out for about 3 to 4 months. The other wrinkles that are static wrinkles are wrinkles like what we call the nasolabial folds. And these are wrinkles like the deep crease that goes from the corner of your nose down to the corner of your mouth. That's a wrinkle caused more from gravity, not from any actual muscle. Same thing with the wrinkle, the what we call the marionette line, which is a line that comes from the corners of the mouth downward. Those are not treated by Botox because muscles, once again, don't create those. And so Botox, basically, you do injections into the muscles most of the time in the upper face, causes those muscles to relax for about 3 to 4 months. During that time, you don't really see those lines much. And because it works so efficiently, it is super, super popular.
And you mentioned some of those lines being caused by different facial movements when it comes to dynamic. I've heard you talk about the fact that if we do that too much over a lifetime, obviously some of this is
Yeah.
natural. It's going to happen to all of
Yeah.
us as we age. But if we're accentuating expressions throughout the day continuously, we can actually accentuate the rate at which we get those wrinkles.
Yeah, there's actually a story. I don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly a long time ago, Elvis Presley forbade Priscilla from making those wrinkles on her forehead. And as horrible as that is, there is truth to that. If you can technically train yourself not to elevate your brows a lot, and there are actual things like forehead tapes and even silicone pads that people will wear on parts of their face during the day and while they're asleep at night as splints to help remind themselves not to make those lines. Well, obviously, Botox will do that as well. But the key with Botox, and the reason why it gets a bad rap as far as making people look weird and stuff like that, is because if you can do one of two things. You can completely erase those lines from being made completely, in which case your muscles don't move, and that can look really weird, especially if somebody's crying. You've ever seen, there's a video from the Kardashians, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, where Kim Kardashian's crying, and her face looks so odd because where you normally get to squint your face up when you're crying, hers doesn't move that well, and it's just kind of strange. Now, if you do Botox in a conservative fashion, unless you're making a really a big time crying face, and usually people, it's not so obvious. So that's one issue. The second issue is going to be when you Botox the forehead muscles, you can really change the shape of the eyebrows. So you may have seen celebrities like Nicole Kidman, where she has had potentially, I believe, I'm not her doctor, but she may have had Botox and it causes her eyebrows to look kind of overarched. You may have seen people like that. On the flip side, if it's overdone, it can also cause the eyelids to drop significantly. Many years ago, when Renee Zellweger was at, I think it was a Vanity Fair party or something like that, she showed up like, oh my gosh, she looks so different. We don't even recognize her. I think it's because she had too much Botox, causing everything to kind of drop a bit. So you just have to be careful with Botox, especially in the forehead. I do think it's safer if you're going to just try for the first time to do the frown lines between the brows or the crow's feet. I think you're not going to get as much of a change in those areas. to your overall appearance. And that's where a lot of guys, people who are in showbiz, they get Botox, but they don't do their forehead so much as they do the frown lines and maybe the crow's feet.
And for people that want to take an even more natural approach to wrinkles in those lines we talked about, anything like cream wise or masks that can do a similar thing?
Unfortunately, nothing works quite the same as Botox. I think that using the retinol is about as good as you can get as far as well as doing those treatments like the microneedling. But because, it's kind of like the root cause, you're not treating the root cause of those wrinkles, which are the muscles. You are treating the symptom. And so it's one of those situations where doing, let's say, creams and laser treatments and microneedling, you're really just treating the symptom of the root cause, which the root cause is unfortunately going to be that muscle. Now, one of the things that's really interesting because it's super popular on social media is face yoga. And that's one thing you're kind of alluding to just a few minutes ago is when you make these extreme facial expressions. So people do this face yoga where the idea is that you make these really extreme facial expressions. And the idea is that there's a belief that as you get older, your muscles will sag and that if you exercise them, you will tighten them and cause the face to look lifted and tighter. And unfortunately, that's not really true. Muscles do tend to get weaker. They can get smaller. But the problem, let's say, doing these extreme facial expressions as a way to look younger is that you are now making those wrinkles over and over again. And the more you make them, the more they get inset. And so you're technically, by doing things like that, face yoga, and making these extreme expressions and trying to hold it, it's kind of like our mom said a long time ago, if you keep making that face, it's going to stay there. That's the idea behind wrinkles too. There was actually studies that did look at those types of things and did find that the one benefit of a face yoga, though, is that like anything, when you are working out muscles, those muscles can get bigger. And one of the things that happens to us as we get older is we lose volume in our face. My face is thinner than it was when I was 30 years old. And so by making those expressions, your muscles will enlarge a little bit, your volume goes up a little bit, but it may be at the expense of deeper lines. And so it's not, it's a way to prevent getting filler, but at the same time, you get the down thing of potentially seeing deeper lines afterwards.
Well, let's talk about fillers, a more unnatural way to have a similar response. What exactly is that, and how common are they?
So injectable fillers are the number 2 most common cosmetic treatment, and they're often confused with Botox. They are very, very different. So injectable fillers, basically the way I describe it, they're like liquid skin. The original filler was collagen, not surprisingly, because our skin is composed mainly of collagen. And this is what was used back in the 90s. You may remember, you're probably too young to remember, there was a movie called Beaches and an actress named Barbara Hershey, where everybody at the time, this was back in the 90s, accused her of having had her lips injected with collagen. So collagen was the original filler. It was not great because it only lasted a couple of months, maybe 3 months at the most. And so collagen started dropping off in the early 2000s and was replaced by hyaluronic acid fillers for the most part. Hyaluronic acid is a naturally occurring substance. It's a moisturizer of our skin. And the great thing with hyaluronic acid fillers, a couple of things. The first thing is that it can be cross-linked to make hyaluronic acid fillers either really thick or really thin or anywhere in between. Because you don't want to use the same type of filler to, let's say, enhance the cheeks or the cheekbones or enhance the chin as you want to, let's say, inject and try to fill in under the eyes where the skin is really thin. So you can cross-link hyaluronic acid fillers to make them thick and kind of firm. And that's the type of filler you maybe want to inject into areas where you want the bone to protrude a little bit more, make it look like that. But it can also be cross-linked to a point where you can make it kind of thin and watery. So you can inject it in thin areas like under the eyes or kind of like rubbery where you can inject it, let's say, into the lips to try to pump up the lips. And so, like I said, it's like liquid skin where essentially you inject it and it fills an area out. Hyaluronic acid fillers last anywhere from 6 months to a couple of years. And the other benefit with an HA filler is that there is an enzyme called hyaluronidase where you can inject it into that filler and melt that filler away. That is super important because number one, you may get a result you don't like, in which case you can melt it away. And number two, the worst thing that can happen if you get filler is an intravascular occlusion. And what that means is that if you accidentally inject filler into a blood vessel, into an artery, and that artery is supplying blood to a part of your face and that artery gets clogged up, what can happen? That part of your face can have insufficient blood supply. It can become ischemic, meaning that's getting unhealthy, and it can even necrose or die. There have been people who've had complications from fillers where they've lost parts of their nose, parts of their lip, and have even gone blind from injections of filler. So filler is very different than Botox. You're not going to go blind if you get Botox. I don't know of any situation that's ever happened. You don't get intravascular occlusion with Botox. Filler can be much more dangerous if it's done in the wrong hands or if you get a complication from it. So how do you prevent that? You want to make sure, number one, don't do it if you don't need it. Number two, make sure it's an HA filler. So if something happens, you can melt it away. There are fillers out there that are not HA. Silicone, Bellafill, Radiesse. These are fillers that are not made with hyaluronic acid. There are doctors injecting these every day. And if you get an intravascular occlusion from one of those, you're basically screwed. So I strongly discourage people from using those.
As you talk about complications, it gets me thinking about your story. And the way I understand it, you came into this holistic world from a complication with a patient doing a facelift.
Yeah.
I'll have you tell that story and how it made you pivot your career at that point.
Yeah. So, I went through traditional training. I did 4 years of medical school at Michigan State University. I did 3 years of general surgery residency, 2 years of plastic surgery residency, and I did a 1-year fellowship, which is like an apprenticeship with a big name plastic surgeon out in Beverly Hills. And I started my practice in Michigan in 2004. And my goal at the time, I came into town, I sent letters to 25 plastic surgeons in town, asking them to take me on as a partner and to, hey, you're looking for a younger associate, I'll take your ER call for you. I'll see your patients for you. And I got 0 offers, no replies. And so Jesse, I'm like, look, we're moving here. My wife's parents are here, and this is where we're going to settle down. And if nobody's going to help me, I'm going to take their business from them. And so I really worked my tail off in the first few years to start my practice, to get my practice going. And I got really successful pretty quickly. But honestly, I was a very traditional plastic surgeon. There's a saying in surgery, to cut is to cure, where the only way to heal is with cold steel, and we're taught everything about surgery in our training and nothing about non-surgery. Okay. So for example, with nutrition, we talked a lot about nutrition at the beginning of this podcast. I learned about nutrition when I was a resident, almost nothing when I was a medical student. But what did we learn about? We learned about if we had a patient in the ICU who was on a ventilator, what to put in through their feeding tube. We learned about how to write orders for TPN, which is parenteral nutrition, which is nutrition through an IV. But we would write orders for this stuff, and then it would be 2 a.m, and we would go to the hospital cafeteria, and it's Friday night in the hospital cafeteria, and we just chow down on French fries and deep fried mozzarella sticks and deep fried apple slices and stuff like that, not realizing just how horrible it is to our health. And this happens throughout the country every day. And so I practiced really as a traditional plastic surgeon for many years. And then, as you mentioned, I had a patient of mine who had a facelift. And, for me, when we look at surgery, we look at the type of operation. And when you are not that successful, or let's say you're lower down in your training, you do simpler operations. And as you advance in your field, patients trust you to do more with them. Okay. So patients may trust almost anybody to do a bit of lipo on them. But if you're going to do their facelift, that you've got to be really good and they got to have a lot of trust in you. So for many years, Jesse, I gauged the success of my practice based off how many facelifts I had on my schedule. And so I had a patient who I did a facelift on, and she developed a horrible complication. She died after the operation, a few days afterwards. And it wasn't my fault. It wasn't her fault. She had a massive heart attack, and we had her tested by a cardiologist prior to surgery. We had no idea she had underlying heart disease. The surgery went perfectly. She looked great. And then she just dropped dead like 3 days later over a weekend. And this sent me reeling. I thought about quitting plastic surgery, about maybe being a family doctor, maybe quitting, my everything, medicine altogether. But getting into that deep, dark place, it really made me realize that I needed to look at the practice of medicine very differently. And so that's when I opened my eyes to alternative medicine, to functional medicine, and to the fact that there was so much that I didn't know about health. And so I spent thousands of hours learning about it, and those became the principles of autojuvenation and the basis of the book, Younger for Life. And so now, really, I've realized that the goal of being a plastic surgeon is not to bring my patients to the operating room, but to keep them out of the operating room. And that's the kind of, there's 5 pillars of autojuvenation. It's what you eat, when you eat, nutritional supplements, skincare, and non-invasive treatments. And that's what we've covered in your podcast, I think, pretty well so far.
I want to come back to the protocol, but first, you mentioned when you eat. We didn't talk about that when we were going over the food part. So let's
No,
come
that's
back
right.
to that and talk about fasting and incorporating this into our healthy eating, or in that case, not eating plan.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I started studying a lot of the works of anti-aging scientists, and a lot of the discussion now is, what one thing can you do naturally, activity can you do to prolong your health span? And inevitably they come back to calorie restriction, eating less food, and then mouse studies prove that and all of that. But it's hard, who wants to calorie restrict themselves for the rest of their lives? And so we're looking now at fasting being a way to essentially do that, but doing that in a way that's, I think, very manageable. So for me, I'm not somebody who does a 5-day water fast. I've got friends of mine who do that. They love it. Like, it's not my thing. And I think, like our biohacking friends, like, it's this very small percent of the population that can do that. But what we do know is that in our society, and I know this is stuff that you have covered before, the whole idea of eating constantly, which is what we do, is actually not good for us. And it baffles me now when you think about there are doctors saying, especially in the 90s and 2000s, that it's, instead of having a couple of meals a day, to just graze all day, and that's actually better for us. Like, oh my gosh, how can we think that that's like the right thing? And so the idea really essentially, and I know you've covered this before with other people, is autophagy. And it's the fact that really, if our body, we need to give our body periods of time where we're not fueling it. And when we do, it allows this process of autophagy to occur, where essentially our bodies will recycle a buildup of their cellular waste. And so I mentioned earlier that the 5th cause of aging of the skin is a buildup of cellular waste. Our cells will create these waste products. They're used organelles, they're proteins, they're discarded mitochondria, and they will sit in the cells, basically just gunking up the system, slowing down the processes until our body can get rid of them. But our bodies have this natural recycling ability and process called autophagy, where if our bodies run out of energy, it can then use this energy, intracellular waste products, for energy. And it cleans the cells out, makes them function more efficiently. And like anything in life, autophagy slows down as we get older. And so the part about the when you eat is trying to bring in a little bit of intermittent fasting, and even, for me, a lot of my audience, they're people who are, I've got, I don't know how many millions of followers on TikTok and YouTube and stuff. And they're not all people who are really, keyed into a lot of functional medicine and alternative medicine recommendations and lifestyle. And so for me, if I could just try to get them to start off with a 12-hour fast and then ideally get that up to a 16-hour fast a couple of times a week, I do believe that's sufficient for most people to get some of that autophagy process going and to get them feeling better. And so what we did in the book is we have a 21-day jumpstart where we took people, and for 21 days, we had them do basically clean up their diet. They got rid of gluten, they got rid of dairy, they got rid of ultra-processed foods and sugar-rich foods, promoted the healthy sources of protein, the healthy fats, the antioxidant-rich foods. We put them on very basic supplements, the 5 supplements I talked to you about earlier. We had them do the 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. And then we had them just in those 2 weeks, 2 and 3. So week 1 is just a cleaning up the diet. Week 2 and 3, we incorporated 2 16-hour fasts in week 2 and week 3. And that's it, very simple. And then we did add, actually, when they resumed refeeding after they did the 16-hour fast, we had them go on a pseudo keto type of a diet. And I'll talk about that in a minute. We found that after 21 days, making these very simple changes, that people's energy levels soared, that their skin looked better, that they would get compliments from people that didn't know they were doing that their skin was looking radiant and so much better. And people would lose unwanted weight as well. So we did it in my office for a limited number of people that we tested it for the book and everything, found great results with that. And then when the book came out, we had 10,000 people doing it and found the same thing, just these great changes with them. And so I do believe that adding in that component of intermittent fasting can really be helpful for cleaning your body out from the inside out. And that's, I think, a key component overall of staying healthy.
You quickly mentioned the keto adjunct to that. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so this is something that we did differently that I haven't seen anybody before. As I studied all this, I realized that there are certain foods, even though they'll break your fast, they stimulate autophagy. Okay, so we believe that autophagy in general occurs when we stop eating and for a certain period of time. But there are certain foods that actually will help to stimulate the process of autophagy, and others that will basically stop it in its tracks. So in general, carbohydrates do stop autophagy, okay? And it has to do with insulin and glucagon and stuff like that. But certain fats do not. Healthy fats actually can promote the process of autophagy. And then the other group of foods that help promote it are foods that are rich in polyphenols. And so we looked then for the our subjects, what we do is they do a 16-hour fast. So they would stop eating at 8 p.m. And then they wouldn't eat the next day until noon. And then from noon and the rest of that day, that refeeding day, essentially, they would have foods that are rich in healthy fats, like omega-3 fatty rich foods like cold water fish, and then foods that are rich in monounsaturated fats, so like olive oil, olives, avocados, nuts, and seeds. And then we'd also have them eat polyphenol rich foods. And those are in general dark and colorful, darkly kind of colorful fruits and vegetables. So you talk about like black beans, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, foods like that. And I do think that may, theoretically help, even though they're breaking their fast, they may still help to promote that autophagy process for the rest of that day as well.
All right, now I want to come back to the protocol. We've gone over the morning just to refresh, cleanse, antioxidants, sunscreen. Then we get to the evening. You mentioned if we're only going to wash one time a day, we want to do it in the evening.
Yes.
And so we're going to cleanse again. And then was it a vitamin A type cream that goes on next? Talk about that next step.
So that's going to be the retinol. Okay. And so retinol, if you pick one anti-aging cream, look for retinol first. Retinols are derivatives of vitamin A. If you've heard of Retin-A, Retin-A is a prescription version of it. For people who have real oily, real thick skin, if you've got access to a dermatologist or a plastic surgeon, then go with the prescription version of it. And your insurance may even cover it if you tell them you have acne. So that's one option is Retin-A. But for most people who have more sensitive skin, like I can't use Retin-A, it's too strong for me, then I would go with the retinol. Retinol is an over-the-counter version of Retin-A. And most skincare companies have that. And so for most people, that's very accessible. That's one of our top sellers, our retinol moisturizer at Youn Beauty. And most people can use that. If you've got kind of sensitive skin, you want to try using a retinol, start by using it every 2 to 3 nights, and then increase it after about 2 weeks if you're tolerating it, because you can get some redness, you get some flaking. The belief is that you can get an acute inflammation, but if you keep using it, you can reduce chronic inflammation. And that's the belief behind using retinol. So most of the studies are not so much on retinol, but there's a lot of studies on Retin-A, the prescription version of it, and it's shown to increase collagen, to reverse fine lines and wrinkles, to lighten age spots, and to even reverse early pre-skin cancers. And so if you've got somebody who's a friend and they've got history of skin cancers on their face, one thing I definitely recommend is that they use a prescription strength Retin-A, because it may even reverse some early pre-skin cancers and help prevent them from showing up later on. And on top of that, though, it's a great anti-aging cream anyway.
And I believe with the Retin-A, at least, there's a safety concern for pregnant and breastfeeding moms.
With any of those, yes. Because
is it
we
both of them as well?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know of any studies that show that there's any negative impact, but with the retinol. But in general, yes, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, with any type of skincare product, you got to be very careful. For my pregnant or breastfeeding women and my patients, as well as my followers, I really encourage them just to limit yourself, to use a cleanser, moisturizer, and a sunscreen, and don't worry about the actives at this point. Like just go minimal until you're done, and then go ahead and get started on the other stuff.
But otherwise, if we're not part of that special population, that would be a daily thing if our skin can tolerate it for life.
Yes. Yeah. So there's I'd say that I look at 3 groups. Okay. So if you're looking at anti-aging, okay, what anti-aging cream should I use? you're going to be one of three categories. The first category is like my father-in-law. He's got real oily, thick skin. So for him, a prescription strength Retin-A is a way to go. Okay, it's going to be the strongest because his skin is so thick and oily, it can tolerate it. And you're going to get the best results if you use a stronger thing. For somebody with average skin, like not somebody who's ultra oily, but also not somebody who's super, super sensitive, then using a retinol works very nicely. And technically, retinol is the reason why retinol is over the counter is that when you apply it, it's actually in an inactive form. But then it undergoes two chemical reactions after you apply it. And what does it become? It becomes Retin-A. It actually becomes tretinoin, this exact same thing. But when you apply it, it's in them and it's technically inactive. And that's why it's a cosmeceutical, not an actual drug. So the middle group, which might be yourself, if somebody say, yeah, I'm not all that sensitive, but I'm also not like thick and oily, then a retinol is usually a good place to start. And then there's a final group of somebody who says, yeah, I'm really quite sensitive. I break out quite a bit, and I really got to be careful when I put on my skin. That group, I would recommend bakuchiol. Bakuchiol is an ingredient taken from the bobchi plant. And this is something that has been used in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine for hundreds of years. There was a study that compared bakuchiol to retinol head to head and found very similar anti-aging effects. But the difference, bakuchiol was more milder to the skin, did not have the skin reaction. Okay. And so that would be for the real sensitive skin. People who said, yeah, I've tried retinol. It makes me cry. I don't like it. Then go with the bakuchiol because you may get very similar results with that, but without the skin irritation. But bakuchiol isn't technically scientifically as proven as, let's say, retinol.
And for the bakuchiol, is that in an oil or a cream, or how does that come?
No, you can have that in cream or serum form. We have one that we released not that long ago. It's one of our new products, a peptide and bakuchiol moisturizer. But there are some that bakuchiol is in more of a serum if you want to have that. Really, that's just depends on the brand.
And for somebody that wants to take it even further and they pick their category within those along that continuum of natural to the Retin-A,
Is it?
what else could they put in as another step
Yeah.
there to biohack even further?
Yeah. So if you say, hey, look, I don't mind putting more than one cream on, and I really want to kind of fight that aging process. And the next group of products I would consider would be growth factor-based products or peptides. Growth factor-based products are more limited and they're more expensive. Some of them have actually been based off of actual cell lines from long ago, where they actually drew cells from, if I remember right, it was like foreskin. And so they take actually the growth factors from it, and they put that in the lab and all that and created products from that. Those are the thing with growth factors is that I don't think that they're as proven as retinol, and they're a lot more expensive. But for those people who want to splurge and want to try something that's expensive and feels expensive, go with a growth factor-based cream. For people who are on more of a budget, but they do want to do more and kind of hack it a bit more, then there are peptide-based creams. There's a lot of different peptides out there. So what are peptides? Peptides are groups of proteins. We mentioned peptides when we were talking about collagen, but basically they're small groups of proteins that act as cellular messengers. And they basically are messengers that send messages to our skin cells to create more collagen. And there are a lot of different peptides. There's copper peptide, there's matrixyl. The benefit of peptides are very mild on the skin, and they're usually not that expensive. And so that's a great option for people as well. And then the final option, which is really kind of on the horizon now, are exosomes. Exosomes have traditionally been associated with stem cell treatments, but essentially those act kind of like peptides or cellular messengers, but instead of just messaging the cells to create more collagen, they can do potentially a lot more than that with reducing inflammation and other types of potential options. But those are really now kind of on the horizon, and they're not really quite there yet.
All right, so that's our biohacking step for at night. The final step, is that just a face cream?
That's just a moisturizer if you need it. Yeah, and that's going to be optional. There's a belief that applying moisturizer is anti-aging to your skin, and it really is not necessarily true. When I started my practice many years ago, plastic surgeons, we get skincare lines, and we get lines in our practices to sell them. And there are certain companies that sell their medical grade products to plastic surgeons to resell to their patients, and they have active ingredients like retinol, like Retin-A, and stuff like that in them. And I'll tell you, Jesse, for many years, I sold these products in my office. We saw a lot of changes in our patients with it. Patients loved it. But the entire time when I was selling this, I harbored this secret that I couldn't use these products myself. Because if I were to apply these products on my skin, I'd break out into hives. I would get itchy and rashes and stuff from them. So for many, many years, I just used soap and water on my skin with a mild moisturizer. Um, and so it wasn't until I kind of had this epiphany, I started learning more about alternative medicine several years into my practice, that I started trying quote unquote clean beauty products, natural products. And I was shocked that I could apply all sorts of these products on my skin and my skin would feel great afterwards and wouldn't react at all. And it made me realize that there are so many of these chemicals and additives and fragrances in these other products that cause me to react to it. But the problem with the natural products is that they're just moisturizers. They weren't doing anything to actually fight the aging process. And so that's why I created my own skincare line, Youn Beauty, because I wanted to kind of combine the best of both worlds, active ingredients with natural and organic ingredients, components. And so the thing with moisturizers, it's kind of like some of these natural products, like they're great. You can apply a natural product on your skin that's a moisturizer, it's filled with great oils and stuff, but they're not actually going to reverse the actual aging so much. They may be a bit of an antioxidant, they may be a bit of an anti-inflammatory, but they're not going to actually help reverse fine lines and wrinkles or lighten your spots or anything like that. That's why you need to get the retinol and these other things we're talking about.
Got it. In the natural world, it seems like when it comes to moisturizers, there's two camps, the oils versus the creams. How do you feel about the two?
I think it's just more of a personal preference. Now, first of all, oils, the first thing, if you want to try an oil, the easiest way to start is with a cleansing oil. So there are three ways to remove makeup from your skin. And here are two guys talking about removing makeup from your skin. The first way is makeup wipes. And really, I think the dermatology and skincare world is pretty much in agreement that makeup wipes are not a good idea. Number one, for the climate and the environment, it's a lot of waste that you create. And number two, there's a belief that if you use a makeup wipe, essentially instead of removing your makeup, it just smears it around your face. And so there's two good ways to remove makeup in general. You can use a micellar water that's kind of inexpensive. It's a type of kind of a cleansing water that you can use, or you can use a cleansing oil. That was made very popular in Korea. Cleansing oils, the idea is that like dissolves like. And a lot of people think, oh, if I use a cleansing oil on my skin, it's going to make my skin feel really greasy, isn't it? And the answer is actually no. But what it will do is the opposite of what we talked about with astringents. Astringents basically just removing all the oil from your skin and drying it out essentially. With cleansing oils, the idea is that it can help to get rid of that dirt and the makeup and the debris, but still keep your natural essential oils left on your skin afterwards. And so people will then do what's called a double cleanse, where you use the oil-based cleanser to get rid of the makeup, and then you use your regular cleanser after that to kind of get your skin ready for the treatments that you're going to do.
How do you feel about clay masks? That's something I like to do about once a week to just pull out the oils, or at least
Yeah.
that's what I'm picturing it doing, and just tightening up the skin.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's kind of it's great for removing the quote unquote toxins and for kind of cleaning out your pores and for really just overall rejuvenating your skin. I think those are fantastic, very natural ways to really give yourself almost a spa experience at home. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Anything else in that realm? Because I'm somebody to err more in the natural. Some of the stuff we've gone into today is beyond what I would personally be comfortable doing, but I'm interested in it, and I think other people will be as well. But when it comes to actual application at home, things in that realm like a clay mask or
Mhm.
different oils that are totally natural, anything else of value?
There are a lot of things that you can do that people will do as far as making at-home masks themselves. Like one of the things that's in my book is we've got an orange juice mask where basically you combine orange juice with, and it's like 3 tablespoons of orange juice with a third cup of plain yogurt. Make sure it's full fat yogurt, it's not non-fat. You mix it up into a little bowl and you apply that to your skin and leave it for about 20 minutes. And then gently wash it off with some kind of lukewarm water, and you'll find your skin's going to feel rejuvenated afterwards. So there are definitely things that you can do on a natural basis. There are actually books that just give recipes that you can create from products at home using at-home ingredients to help with your skin. So for let's say that orange juice peel or orange juice mask, there is citric acid in the orange juice, and there's lactic acid in the yogurt, as well as healthy fats in the yogurt. All that's going to be great for the skin with a little bit of exfoliation, as well as some anti-inflammatory agents there as well. So those are definite ways that you can help to rejuvenate your skin if you want to do it naturally. For me, the way I look at that, it's a lot easier to just go buy one, from a company that you trust, that puts the ingredients there, that doesn't have the fragrances and all the additives and stuff, and to use that versus trying to get that stuff together in your fridge. And it gets sometimes a little bit messy and stuff. So for me, I think as much as there are definite options, it's funny, there was a video I reacted to not that long ago about somebody using flaxseed. Had this huge bowl of flaxseed. Flaxseed, you mix this with water, it's better than Botox. And she's putting it all over her face and her hair and everything. And it's like, okay, flax seeds are great and all, but who wants to make such a mess? Like, I'd rather just, use a real mask, that's actually made for your face. It's a lot cleaner and easier, but, to each their own.
One area that's kind of tied to the food piece is hydration. And in a classic sense, you'll often hear people talk about hydration for the
Yeah.
skin. How much truth is there to that? And what
I
do you
think,
do personally to hydrate to maintain your skin?
yeah, I think it's important, but I think it is, in some ways, it is overstated. There are some celebrities where they go, wow, what is your beauty secret? Oh, I drink a lot of water. And it's like, come on, that's BS. You drink a lot of water and you've got a personal trainer and you've got a dietitian and you've got an esthetician and you get Botox and you get chemical peels, all that type of stuff. So I think, like anything, drinking sufficient amounts of clean, pure water is just essential for our health. Is that going to change how your skin looks? I mean, if you were really dehydrated before, maybe, but is it going to really make a huge difference overall in the skin? I think it's really going to be more looking at it for overall health. And I do think that a lot of people will use that as a convenient explanation for why they look so good when there are a whole lot of other reasons why they look as good as they do.
I hear you.
So I think it's definitely important. We have got a triple reverse osmosis filter in both of our houses, and I think that's so important. And we drink a lot of water. Trying to limit any type of sugary drinks that you drink, so important. Just drinking that filtered water is so important.
What about exercise and creating sweat through that, or going in a sauna to help with the skin?
Yeah, I think this is all great for overall just detoxing the body, for making sure that your body is healthy overall. There are studies that do look at exercise and the quality of your skin, and they do show that exercising does improve the health of your skin. In my book, I do have a few kind of pearls. Now, I'm not a fitness expert necessarily. I think there's certain things to be very, that are important, that especially as I've gotten older, I have realized. One of the things I put in the book, which I think is so important for people, especially over the age of 50, and something I'm seeing, my parents and my in-laws are both, they're all in their 80s and they're all alive. And one thing I see in both my father and my father-in-law is a loss of balance and mobility as they get older. And there's a belief, especially in their generation and in my generation as well, that as you get older, all you have to do is walk. And so that's what my parents, my in-laws, they walk a lot. And that's great. I think getting your steps in is so important, but it's not exercise. Okay. It's walking, and walking so important, but it is not the perfect exercise, especially as you get older. And the reason why is because what are you doing when you walk? You are using those slow twitch muscle fibers that propel you forward. And that is it. Okay. Now, one of the things that we fear as we get older, especially my parents, my in-laws' age, is breaking a hip. And there was a study that found a 20% mortality rate, 20 or 30% mortality rate in people over the age of 50 if they break a hip within 1 year. Within 1 year of breaking a hip, if you're over the age of 50, there's like a 20 or 30% mortality rate. I'm 51, and I'm like, what? And so how do you avoid breaking your hip? Well, obviously, having strong bones, muscle, strength training and all that, I think is so important. But it's also important to be able to keep your balance and making sure that if you do trip, that those muscles that are necessary to stabilize your body are ready to do that. Okay. So there's a difference between slow twitch fibers and fast twitch muscle fibers. Okay. Slow twitch muscle fibers are muscle fibers that are used for slower kind of endurance activities. Okay. So walking 2 miles a day using slow twitch muscle fibers. But when you're walking, that's all you're doing. You're not using those muscle fibers that will propel you backward or propel you to the side. Okay. And so those other muscles are atrophying. You get sarcopenia, they get smaller. And you're not using any of your fast twitch muscle fibers. Fast twitch muscle fibers are those muscles that are used for explosive movements. Okay, so if you trip and you are your age or my age, we stabilize ourselves very quickly and we don't think about it. Just our body does that. And what does it do it with? With the fast twitch muscle fibers. Okay. But as we get older, if we don't use those muscle fibers, they start to degrade. And so then what happens? You get somebody who's 80 years old and all they do is walk and they trip on a curb and they go down and they land on their face and then they break their hip. Okay, because they haven't been using those other muscles. And so it's so important as you get older. And there's one thing I put in the book to focus on two things, add two things definitely. Whatever you're doing working out wise, add these two things. You have to do it as you get older. Number one, strength training. Okay. And if you don't like doing it, do these three exercises: chest press, rows, and leg press. Okay. Chest press, rows, and leg press. By doing these three exercises, you're going to be working the vast majority of muscles that you need to keep those fast twitch muscle fibers nice and strong and ready in case you need them. And then the other thing I recommend everybody as they get older is to do yoga. Okay. Now, yoga doesn't work fast twitch fibers. It works the slow twitch fibers, but it's going to be so helpful for keeping your balance so that you don't trip, so that you can keep that balance and make sure that the muscles are nice and strong and limber and as you get older. So for me, when I look at exercising and getting older, that's a huge part that I put in the book. It's like, it's so important that, if you like to play tennis, you get older, go golfing, by all means, keep doing that. Keep your walking, but you got to add these two things. That's going to give you the most longevity and keep you younger for life.
What about specifically, though, the sweating aspect of exercise or going in the sauna to clean out the pores, the oils, the dirt? Do you see a lot of value in that?
I think there is. It's interesting. I put, I'm a fan of infrared saunas, and I put a post on social media a couple years ago about it, saying how, hey, I'd love to get. I don't have actually a infrared sauna in my house. My wife and I keep talking. And we're like, do we have room for it? I'm like, yes, we do. And she's like, I don't know. But I posted on it and saying how it can help. You can sweat out the toxins. And the term toxins, it's hard because I think for a lot of people, like the term cleanse, it really is a term that gets people triggered. There was a dermatologist that commented on my post, a very mean comment of like, this is BS. Like, what are you talking about? And so I blocked her. And then she was actually a editor for one of our kind of throwaway journals. Like, there are our main journals where we call the white journals. And then there's journals that we get for free that companies just send us and they have ads in it and stuff. And then she wrote actually an editorial in it about, I followed this plastic surgeon with this huge audience, and then he posted about how he did a sauna and it helped to clear his pores and, reduce toxin load. And it's such BS. Then he was so mean. He blocked me when I was very nice and challenging, which she wasn't. She insulted me. So I'm with you. I mean, I think that overall it's helpful. Are there any studies to show that going in a sauna is going to improve the quality or the health of your skin? Nothing that I have seen. But I think when you're looking at overall health and especially longevity, and I know that there are studies that do show that if you do infrared sauna regularly, it does appear to decrease your risk of mortality, all-cause mortality as you get older. So I'm all about that. But as far as like direct correlation with the skin, I don't know of any studies that necessarily have looked at that specifically.
What about sleep and direct correlation with the skin? Obviously, we see these subjective symptoms like bags under our eyes
Yeah.
and puffiness when we don't get a good sleep. But is there
Yeah,
any good science showing the connection there to the skin?
I think that what I have seen with the science of that is going to be also more related to more stress, and sleep. For me, the way I look at sleep, obviously it's absolutely essential. But it's going to be all in kind of that stress category. So I don't know of any studies that say, these people who get 8 hours of sleep have less wrinkles than these people who get 6 hours of sleep. But we do know that stress is a huge ager of the body. And so I kind of combined it into that realm. And so overall stress reduction, getting a sufficient amount of sleep, I think that is so important to keeping your skin looking younger. I mean, you only need to look at the US presidents when they enter office and then 4 or 8 years later. I mean, they've got the best healthcare in the world. They've got, people who are focused on keeping them healthy. yet look how much they age. I mean, look at Obama after 8 years. I mean, how great he got after that. I swear that they aged double in the time that they spent actually in the White House. So I do think stress is a huge, huge part of physical and visible aging of the skin.
Tony, we've covered a lot. I think a fun way to end here. You've mentioned you're 51. Anybody watching the video can see you look incredible for 51.
Hey, Asian don't raisin. That's what they say.
We know you wear the helmet for your hair, and I know I've heard you on another show talk about a little bit of Botox you have done between the eyebrows.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you take us through all the different things you're doing at this point with all this knowledge you've accumulated more conventionally in the first part of your career and now the holistic, what you're doing to look the way you do?
So I'm doing, so we talked about the diet stuff, and I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody is. And I have undergone changes. I went almost plant based for a while. I was vegetarian for a while. I've gone, more towards, I think, realizing the importance of getting sufficient amounts of protein. So I'm doing more of that now. As far as overall skincare, I do the 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine, but I also add a couple of things into it. So I am using a brightening cream every day, morning and evening. Because I do see spots and I'm trying to fight those off. I do get regular IPL treatments. That's the benefit of having my own office is that I get IPL, so that helps to target the dark spots as well. Yesterday, I had Morpheus 8 done to my lower face and my neck and the chin area, and that's the radio frequency microneedling. So I literally had that done yesterday. I've never had filler. Someday I might. There's a new filler out right now called Skin Vive, where it's a much lighter filler that you use to kind of just more subtly plump the skin. So that's something that I may consider sometime here in the future. I do get regular injections of Botox between my brows, and I've considered having a touch under the corner of my mouth, just because my dad and my grandpa have like the bitchy resting face where they got the permanent frown, and I don't want to have that. And I see myself developing it, so if I inject a little bit of Botox basically right here and here, it counteracts a muscle called the depressor anguli oris. And this is a muscle that pulls the corners of the mouth down, and it weakens that muscle. So the idea is the corners lift up. So I'm probably going to do that within the next week or two just to try it. And I'm going to try to videotape that and then post it on my social media to see what it does. And if it makes me look weird, then I won't keep doing it. And then I do the stuff with the hair we talked about. Yeah, I mean, those are the main things. I intermittent fast several times a week. Yeah, I mean, those are some of the main things that I can think of just offhand.
It's interesting because for me, at least, there's this fine line between wanting to take care of myself, look good, the confidence that comes with that,
Yeah,
and then embracing the fact that I'm getting older and the natural changes that are happening. So everybody has their own decisions to make within that realm. And like I said before, some of the things we got into within this conversation are beyond my comfort zone, but everybody needs to find that for themselves. But I
exactly.
think a good place to wrap up is to bring everything full circle and talk about the fact that because somebody tuning into, say, just part of this conversation, it might sound very superficial and very unholistic.
Yeah.
But there is something to taking care of yourself and looking and feeling good and being confident in your skin and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, there's
So I'll have you riff on that as well and share how you feel.
a couple things to consider. There was actually a twin study, I think it was in Denmark, where they looked at two identical twins, and they studied several pairs of them, and they found that the younger looking of the two genetically identical twins lived longer than the one that looked older. Now, is it because they, took better care of themselves? Probably, but that's something to keep in mind. I think, when we look at overall aging, and for me being 51, it was not fun to turn 40, necessarily even 50. The way I look at it is getting older is a blessing. It really is, because what's the alternative? I had a good friend of mine, old high school friend of mine, I haven't seen him in many, many years, who died last week. And I mean, it really hit me because it's like, man, I feel so blessed. I've got my good health. My wife is healthy. My parents and my in-laws are all healthy. My kids are healthy. And so it's a blessing to get older, because the alternative is you could be in the ground. We don't want that. But at the same time, it's not fun to look in the mirror and see some of these changes that we may not want to see. And the good thing about it is right now, it's a very exciting time to get older, because we can fight it every step of the way and you can have fun doing it. okay? Because there's so much available to us from what we talked about food wise to trying some intermittent fasting and seeing how your body, tolerates and how it feels great sometimes by putting it through these little challenges to using certain skincare products, trying at home treatments. There's so much that you can do now. It's not going to get Botox or faceless or anything like that. It really is so much that you can do that can be fun. So it's a great time to kind of fight it every step of the way. But at the same time, understand that, you know what, it's a blessing to get older. We're all going to get older. We're all going to die someday. But why not enjoy this process while we have a chance to do it?
And a lot of the things we talked about, taking care of our skin and looking good, are going to take care of our health in general as well. It's all intertwined,
It
which,
all is, my friend.
yeah. So eating right isn't just about having radiant skin and fasting and using natural products on our skin. It's all intertwined and part of living a long and healthy life. So you can't really totally dismember the two from one another.
And you know what? If your motivation to make these changes in your life comes from your vanity because you do want to look younger or you want to see some of these changes, then by all means, use that vanity to your health's benefit. And that's what I'm hoping to do with all the people that read my book and that follow me.
All right, Tony, we're going to link up your book, your social media, everything in the show notes, your website. Thank you for coming on. Really enjoyed this.
Hey, thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Now that you're done with Tony, you're going to want to stick around here and catch my chat with Dr. Yvonne. She's a toxicologist that's going to teach you how to live a low tox lifestyle. You don't want to miss this. I'll see you over there.
We don't always need to add more. And I think that's the trap that a lot of people fall into. Let me just grab that glutathione supplement and I'm good to go.